Anthony Mooney here. This is where I live and where I farm. The place is called Bryanstown. It's near Maynooth in County Kildare. It extends to about 200 acres. It's a typical Kildare soil, typical to the area here. It's heavy limestone soil. A lot of it is flat, some of it is prone to flooding and heavy rainfall. It really is a grassland farm. We produce beef here. We have suckler cows. We have about 14, 15 suckler cows and an Angus bull. And we buy in store cattle every autumn, every spring, and finish them here on the farm. At the moment there's about 100 cattle here. Cattle numbers generally run from 100 to 120, and the object is to finish most of those cattle every year and sell them on to the factories. We've always wanted to farm with nature here, always had an interest in it, and we observed that when we were making silage here, we were going into the fields at prime breeding time, say for ground nesting birds or for mammals like hares. We observed that they just weren't managing to reproduce or to breed successfully under that type of practice. So we decided to go to hay. Now hay is much riskier because it's very weather prone, and you need weather like this to make your hay and to make it well. But we decided to switch over to that about 10 years ago, and we've stuck with it, and largely speaking we get on very well. The end result is that you cut your hay later. You'll be cutting your hay usually the second week of July, and the great thing about that is it gives ground producing birds, say you had a lark, say you had a meadow pipit on the ground, say you had a hare with young ones on the ground, you give those a chance to reproduce and to rear their young safely. And last year we had young larks here, we reared young larks here on the farm, and we reared meadow pipits. It was marvellous for us to see those birds getting safely away. They're just not that plentiful round about, and they might find it a struggle. And they certainly would find it a struggle if a person was cutting silage. One of Ireland's all-time favourite birds, and certainly one of my favourite birds, is the swallow. Swallows are declining in numbers a lot over recent years. Is there anything we can do to help them? There's always a thing or two you can do to help. What we've done here is give swallows access to the nesting sites that they prefer. Swallows like to nest indoors. So they like to get into sheds, they like to get into farm buildings, and they like dark sheds. They don't like bright sheds, they like dark sheds. So what we've done here is, this is the farm tool shed, and years ago I observed the swallows. The doors were old and left open, and I observed the swallows going in and out. So we had to replace the doors. So we kept thinking of the swallows, and we left a little gap on top of the door. It's about 2 inches, and the swallows will zoom in and out that gap without checking their speed. And of course, when the swallows come in here, it's a dark enough shed, and that's what they actually want. And they'll pick their nesting site, and theirs is up there in the corner. It's an angled corner there, and they'll go out the yard there, and they'll collect mud, collect bits of grass, and they build their nest. Swifts are another declining bird, but the one thing they seem to be short of all the time is a home. So it's quite a simple thing to put up. Just put up boxes, and you can put up a swift call with them, and the swift call draws the swift in, and they will quite quickly avail of the home you give them. They're just swift boxes. We're standing in the middle of a clump of creeping thistle. They're welcome here. There's not a huge amount of them, and they don't take over the place every year, but if you watch them, they're of huge benefit to insects. The thistle produces wonderful amounts of pollen and nectar, and all the insects love it. So in this case here, this plant is feeding an awful lot of insects, and in turn, a lot of those insects are eaten by birds. They're eaten by something else. There's an awful lot of honeybees here. The honeybees are, I'd say there's hives of bees around somewhere, and somebody's going to benefit there, somebody's going to get honey. But we tolerate them on the farm here. Just a little thought on the importance of pollinators. We do whatever gardening we can here for ourselves. We grow as much veg as we can for ourselves. But there's always something interesting to observe. These are broad beans, and they were planted early in the spring. So they started flowering around the middle to the end of April into May. And we remarked at the time that there was very little insect life then because of the cold weather. And we wondered, would those bean flowers be pollinated if the insects weren't around? Here's a bean here now, and it's fairly low down on the plant. We're going to pull it, and we're going to see what's in it. Okay? We'll just open up that bean, and we'll see what's in it. Look, for a whole bean, for a whole pod, one bean. One bean. We'll just take a look higher up the plant. We'll take a look here. Here's much higher up the plant now. This bean would have been flowering, say, the end of May, early June, and things had improved weather-wise. So we'll just open this bean here and we'll see what's in it. And there we are. Nice number of beans in that pod because the insects were around to pollinate it. So that tells you, if you don't have insects, there's no beans. And if you have insects, you get beans. That's the value of pollinators.